Hey everyone, welcome back, and today we're going to talk about what, in my opinion, is the best companion to a 35mm lens. It used to be an 85, but then on the Leica M system, there is no such thing as an 85 that I'm aware of. So I went for this. This is the Leica 90mm APO Summicron. I'm going to show you its optical performance, why I like this lens so much, and why I'm actually not keeping the lens. So for those of you who followed my Instagram for quite a bit, you guys would know that I started out doing street photography on an 85mm lens, and gradually I've gotten wider and wider. I went to a 50, and then I went to a 35, and then a 28 recently, ever since I started shooting the Q3, but then I decided to upgrade to my M11, and these days I've been shooting a 28mm mount lens. But at the end of the day, I find the 35 to be my lens of choice. I prefer the tighter focal length, I prefer the compression. I find the 28 a little too wide for me. I've been using the Light Lens Lab 35mm f2 8 element. I haven't stopped talking about this lens. It hasn't really left my bag or my camera. It literally goes everywhere I go. But I started to miss the telephoto look. And there aren't very many options in the Leica M mount system, a telephoto lens. It's very difficult to focus. Even the 75 is quite difficult to focus if you shoot wide open. I tried the void lens, the 75 f1.5, couldn't really bond with it. Brilliant lens, just wasn't me. Then I started looking into other lenses. I found the 90mm Summicron. I gave it a go, and I instantly fell in love with it. Now let's start by talking about the 90mm focal length. I like doing portraits. I like shooting portrait photography. So I instantly gravitated by this lens. Like I said earlier, I started doing street photography on an 85. Then I gradually went wider and wider. Now, 90mm for street photography, I wouldn't recommend this to be your only lens when you're doing street photography. I like having options. Yeah, sure, switching lenses in street photography sessions is very, very difficult. But then sometimes you just want to show a different perspective. Sometimes you want to tell a different story. Focal lengths tell different stories. A wider lens gives you an immersive feel. A wider lens puts your viewer into the scene. A wider lens gives a more immersive experience, while a telephoto lens, a longer lens, isolates your subject. It gives the feeling of someone looking at the scene instead of being in it. So yeah, there you go. Focal lengths tell a different story. It gives you different looks, different feel, different tools of storytelling. Right, let's get back into it. Build quality. This is a Leica lens. The build quality of the lens will always be sublime. The focus ring is buttery smooth. It has quite a long focus through because it needs critical focus when you're focusing. The aperture ring is really clicky. It goes from f2 all the way to f16. It has a built-in lens hood, which you extend like so. The lens is quite massive if you compare it to different Leica lenses. This is what the 50 Summilux looks like right next to it. As you can see, it's quite a bit taller, but it's not too heavy. I think this is made of aluminium, and the fact that it's made out of aluminium reduces the weight, so it's not really front heavy. I have mine on my Leica M11. Yeah, it still droops forward a bit, but then because it's made of aluminium, the weight distribution is still acceptable. Let's get on to the image quality. So I went out shooting with this lens, and as usual, this is what happened. As you can see, amazing lens, amazing lens. It still has the classic Leica 3D pop to it. This is a good time to explain to you what APO or apochromatic means. APO stands for apochromatic. What APO means is a promise to you that this lens is very, very well corrected. It is going to be very, very sharp in the corners right down to the center because it doesn't have too much chromatic aberrations, minimal chromatic aberrations, or in fact, almost none at all, which makes the image appear sharper. Because it's really sharp, it marries well to the modern Leica 60 megapixel cameras, or even the M10R, which is 40 plus megapixels, if I'm not mistaken. What I found when I'm shooting with this lens is that it's very difficult to focus wide open. I'm nailing probably about 50 to 60% of my shots. What do I not like about the lens? The lens being very clinical, very sharp. I like character lenses. Me personally, I like lenses that render in a special way, in a different way. If I wanted something clinical, I'll be shooting a Sony or a Hasselblad, which gives you unforgiving clinical accuracy. But then I'm a character guy, I'm quite the hipster. So in spite of the lens being very, very good, in spite of the lens giving me sublime pictures when I nail the focus, I find it boring. So I might be switching this lens with the version 1 of the 90mm Summicron. The problem is, that thing is ugly. That thing is really, really ugly. I mentioned earlier that it's very difficult to focus. So what do? On modern Leica cameras, you have the screen. So I use the screen. I don't use focus peaking though. It becomes a game of having the most red possible on the screen itself. There's also the VisioFlex 2, which I've never used, which I don't think I will. Be prepared for some pictures to be out of focus. And the fact that this is a 90mm lens, the fact that I have shaky hands, I need to be at an extremely high shutter speed. I'm talking about 500, 1000, or even beyond that. So it makes stopping down, for me anyway, quite a challenge. So yeah, 90mm lens on a Leica M11. Who is it for? It's for portrait photographers. This is a portrait I took. Brilliant. Shot wide open, very, very nice bokeh. Very, very clean and clinical bokeh. I just don't like it. But then on the other hand, if you prefer modern rendering lenses, if you prefer clean images, if you prefer clinically sharp lenses, this might be the lens for you. There are some cheaper alternatives, I believe, from TT Artisan, which I believe opens up even more to f1.25, and the Leica Summilux, which will cost you 1.5 kidneys. Right, that has been my thoughts on the 90mm f2 Summicron by Leica. See you on the next one.